How's it going, folks? Tactard Ted. It's the 23rd of August. Yes, it's a Tuesday. So, let me get on with it really quickly. I had some discussions with a few folks over Telegram and other messaging services that the government has not been able to disrupt between me talking to folks on both sides of the contact line, by the way, in Europe and Russia. So let's get down to it. Apparently, tomorrow, the Ukrainians are expecting something big. They're expecting a military attack on their major cities. And they're expecting this for two reasons. Number one, their little publicity stunt to blow up Alexander Dugin has kind of backfired. They didn't kill Dugin. They ended up killing his daughter, a 30-year-old journalist inside Russia. And the Ukrainian terrorist, a female intelligence officer who used her daughter as a shield to get in and out of Russia to engage in this act of terrorism, she's ran off to Estonia. And this is all kind of backfiring. It's backing up. I know it's not getting as much press as it probably could or should, because the consequences are going to be dire. But I don't believe that the consequences are going to be massive artillery strikes on Kiev, Lvov, or Kharkov. I know that at least in Kharkov and Kiev, that people have been told to stay off the streets. They basically put a curfew. I mean, what a wonderful way to celebrate the anniversary of you guys being independent, which doesn't piss the Russians off to begin with. Russia became independent roughly the same time that Ukraine did during the breakup of the Soviet Union. So, here's a big holiday for the Ukrainians, and they're hiding everybody away. Yet, May 9 in Mariupol, they had a parade. The victory of World War II, they had a parade. They didn't tell their people to stay in. No, they got out and they celebrated their liberation. They celebrated the end of World War II. Paid memory to all those folks. But there is something that's going to happen tomorrow, and it's going to be big, I have a feeling, if everything I'm hearing is true. And it's going to be legislative. And it's going to happen in the Duma of the Russian Federation. Duma is their legislative branch, or basically like their Congress. And I know that most people, when you think of politics in Russia, or you think about business in Russia, you normally think of corruption. And I'm not going to hide from that. I've seen the corruption. I've seen the corruption with government. I've seen the corruption with individuals. And it's ingrained in their society. But what a lot of people don't realize is when it's not a matter of money, and there's no money, the Russians are very fastidious about the way they apply terms of contracts, terms of service, these sort of things. There isn't a lot of wiggle room on a lot of these things. A perfect example would be at least 2 Russian officers were sacked early on in the operations in Ukraine because they allowed conscripts to be sent to Ukraine. That's a big no-no. The terms of the operation that they're having during the invasion has forbid the use of conscripts. They are only using contract soldiers, or what we would call volunteer, which we have an all-volunteer army. They have a split. They have a certain amount of conscripts, which they do not use in combat except in time of war, and they have not declared war against Ukraine yet. And that's not what they're going to do tomorrow. Tomorrow, if everything I'm hearing is true, they are going to declare Ukraine a terrorist state. And why would they do that? Well, because of the terrorist attack in Moscow that killed Daria Dugina, and because of their shelling of the nuclear power plant in Zaporozhye. And there are other things that have been going on for quite some time. Their use of terrorism within their own borders, of the way they've used some of their nationalist battalions. Now, interestingly enough, what does that mean? Well, that doesn't mean anything. No, Ted, that doesn't mean anything. It's Russia. They can say anything they want. Well, unfortunately, it does mean something. Because once Ukraine has been designated by the Russian Federation as a terrorist state, the Russian Federation then is duty bound to stop doing business with everyone who supports that terrorist state. That means the NATO countries in Europe that are sending weapons to Ukraine are probably going to have their gas shut off. They're probably, if they're on the Russian electric grid, such as Estonia and Latvia, they're probably going to be in the dark. And that also means that they don't have to sell their fertilizer, they don't have to sell their grain, they don't have to sell anything to the West. If the West continues to support Ukraine by sending weapons and providing them intelligence. So you may think that this is much ado about nothing, but really what it does is it gives them the legal standing in their country to break the Gazprom contracts without any interaction from Gazprom. It makes it legal for them to say, look, we're not going to honor contracts with your country because you are supporting terrorism. And if this comes down, it's going to be a lot bigger deal than what you want. You thought it was ugly before. It will get a lot uglier. It's going to get majorly ugly. Russia right now can use this basically to put a lot more pressure on the cracks that are showing up in Europe. We've had, 2 European leaders been forced to hit the bricks because of their nonsense in Ukraine. Boris Johnson's gone. There was also an Italian leader of the country who is now out. And I know that a lot of Germans would like to get rid of Stolz. So I'm not sure how long most of these folks can hold on to power and let their people suffer. One of the governors of one of the German states came out the other day and said, we should really just save as much energy as we can. You know how much energy you would save by using a washcloth instead of taking a shower? I mean, that's where we've gotten. We've gotten to the point where your leaders don't care about you. They much rather have you using a washcloth to clean your junk than to get in a shower. Why? Because, Russia, Ukraine, supporting nationalists who, have made laws. If you were to take some of the laws the Ukrainians have passed over the last couple of years, and you were to substitute Jew for Russian and Hebrew for Russian in certain place, the international community would just be having a shit fit. But for some reason we don't. Somehow it's okay to discriminate against an ethnic minority when that ethnic minority are Russians who want to speak Russian. That's relatively interesting. I've said this before, and I say a lot, I repeat a lot, I hammer the same points a lot. Pardon me, but I think they're important. In the United States, we do not forbid families or businesses from speaking Spanish. We don't do that. That's not the values that we have in the United States. But we're perfectly fine supporting a country that has banned the use of certain languages in public. We've done that with Ukraine. You want to talk about xenophobic. When language becomes objectionable, when language is, how would you say, insulting? It's insulting for somebody else to speak a different language in your country. You know, I've been to Russia. I've spoke English in Russia. I've never had anybody give me any shit. I did have a taxi driver who was trying to get me to buy a ride at an airport one time, and I said no, thank you, instead of spasibo niet. I said no, thank you, and he kind of got offended. But that's not the normal people. Those are the people who are, America has rednecks. We have assholes. Every country has assholes. We don't have the corner on assholes. Russia doesn't have a corner on assholes. And I'll be quite honest, Ukraine doesn't have a corner on assholes. But every country has assholes. My point is, the assholes in Ukraine have forced a lot of laws that would not pass muster here. And we're supportive of that. And I really think we sometimes need to be very careful who we support. We had this deal in Syria where we were backing so-called modern Muslim rebels in Syria. A lot of them turned out to be ISIS head choppers. And a lot of them were simply fronts to get the weapons that we gave them to the ISIS head choppers. And, whether you like it or not, a lot of the stuff that we sent to that region ended up helping people that we should not have been helping. People who were not representative of what we think needs to be happening. And here we are doing the same thing in Ukraine. And we're just flooding the weapons in there. And another thing is, since we're supplying weapons, like a lot of Europe, Russia can shut off trade with us. We already got a fertilizer shortage. And the shortages are going to start showing up. I mean, it's amazing to me if you sit back and you look at how integrated productions were. In Belgium, they're bitching because they can't get glass bottles from Russia now because of the sanctions. Breweries are having real issues with that. And it all comes down to the fact that the government really doesn't care about your life. They care about politics. And I think that we've reached a point here where the absolute uneducated status that a lot of Americans have about a lot of things, and how they all feel entitled that they must comment on something even though they don't know jack shit about it, is a real problem. I challenge you guys to sit down and count how many countries the United States has invaded since 1991 or bombed. And then compare that with the numbers of countries that Russian troops have invaded and or bombed. Now, let me give you a little hint on something. There are two countries that Russia has invaded: Georgia and Ukraine. And you can even make an argument that Georgia was a provocation, that they were provoked into fighting. I don't mind that. We'll just count it as two countries invaded, okay? And we'll go back and we'll count since 1991 how many countries the United States has invaded or bombed. I think you're going to find out that Russia's not quite as aggressive as we are. They're not quite as willing to use military power all over the globe as we are. And I don't make excuses for a lot of those. A lot of those were necessary. I will tell you, we need to look after our own security. I also think that Russia has a right to look after their own security. And if we're going to keep playing the proxy war game, don't be surprised when it bites us in the ass. Because that's not how we do. That's international interest. Our founders would not be happy with that. I think our founders would be a lot more happy with an isolationist America who doesn't want to get involved in foreign entanglements and treaties and alliances that aren't going to prove beneficial to us. And I will tell you what, we benefit zero from our alliance with Ukraine. And, I'm already seeing where there are inroads being made to cut and run. Tomorrow, if the Russians actually do this, that might be the beginning of an exit. It gives us an off-ramp. And it'll be interesting to see if anybody wants to take it. I don't think Biden is smart enough to take it. I don't think Obama will let him take it. And let's just call that out. I do believe that Obama's arm is so far up Biden's ass that that's what's making his mouth move. We're in an interesting situation, folks. We really are. We're at the point now where we're about to understand that economic warfare works two ways. I understand why we do sanctions. It doesn't make it right. We're trying to meddle. We are literally trying to meddle in the political affairs of another state. The same way that we tried to say that, well, we believe Russia interfered in our elections. Russia didn't cause gas to go up. Russia didn't cause food to go up, hoping that we would not vote for someone. We are making the lives of everyday Russians miserable in hopes that they will get rid of Putin. Unfortunately, it's not working. In fact, it's doing exactly the opposite. It's making Putin more popular. Another interesting part about Dugin, the guy whose daughter was murdered, I hear everybody talking, oh, he's the brains behind Putin. He's the brains behind Putin. Not really. In fact, there have been times when Dugin has criticized the Kremlin. And one of the major points of criticism is that Putin did not invade Ukraine and take Donbass and protect it back in 2014, 2015. So it's really interesting that they're trying to tie this guy with the war in Ukraine when Putin's a lot more of a moderate than a lot of you folks want to realize. I love how we know everything about Russian politics, but yet we don't know shit. I got people telling me the KGB existed. The KGB has not existed in going on 30 years. It's now the FSB, and there's a whole different bunch of things with that. But yet people don't want to let go of the past. They can't modify and move on. They have to hold dearly to what they think they know. Navalny, the great Navalny. Navalny is way to the right of Putin, but you wouldn't know it. Oh no, he's a reformer. He's this, he's that. No, he's anti-Putin. And you guys don't understand that if Navalny took power, you'd be in a real shitter. You don't realize that the president between Putin's terms, Dmitry Medvedev is being quite hawkish. And Medvedev, if he takes power, if he gets elected after Putin, you're going to have problems. Because the pride has come back to these people. I remember working in Baikonur, and we had one guy, an interpreter named Vlad. Good guy. Big into music. Great guy. Like him. He's a cool dude. And he goes strutting down the hallway one day, and he's wearing a t-shirt with Putin on it, and it says in Russian, Crimea is Russia. And I get it. I understand enough to look at that and see what it says and be able to read it. And I just started laughing because this is all pride. This isn't someone, this isn't the weak Russians that we're used to dealing with. This isn't the defeated people who are all downtrodden. These folks just don't think that they have to put up with your shit. And to be honest, they're not going to. And the fact that a lot of you folks don't get the new reality of what's going on really says a lot about how we're going, how things are doing. Anyhow, I gotta go. Talk to y'all later. Bye.